How about Tommy in Newport News?
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Tommy,
Hi, Matt.
how are you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
All right, hey. I'm doing well. I'm just calling about the authorship of Matthew. Last week you mentioned that Matthew is anonymous, and I just want to note for you that Tacitus's annals are also anonymous.
Yeah.
And we get our first description to Tacitus from Tertullian 100 years after the fact.
Yeah.
But for Matthew, our first description is from Papias, only about 50 years after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to know how that's not special pleading for you to deny the authorship of Matthew when we have actually better evidence for Matthew than we do for Tacitus.
I'm not saying that the authorship is necessarily wrong. I'm saying that we have no idea who the author is, and if we find out secondhand, as we would find out from Tacitus, etc. Can I finish? You asked me a question. Sure. I mean, I've already seen your video where you agree with me while you're disagreeing with me. But
no.
Sorry?
Go ahead.
And then you adopt a particular tone at the end of your video that makes me sound like I don't sound. And so I like the fact that both of the videos are up there so people can go compare, because it was a bit silly. My point was, when you're judging the authorship of the book by the standards that we would normally use if we were judging any other work from history. Right. However, that has nothing to do with mythical claims. And you cannot say that we can go ahead and say this is Matthean authorship based on the same standards that we might use somewhere else, and then also say, therefore, the stuff is necessarily true. My only point was that we don't have an autograph. We don't know who the author is. The names were ascribed by the church, and there are reasons to believe that Matthew wasn't the author, because there's no reason for an eyewitness to rely so heavily on other accounts.
Matt, could I just address that real quick?
Sure.
You mentioned that it was mythical, but I just want to note here that Matthew is actually ancient bioi, and that's become the consensus since Richard Burridge authored his book, What Are the Gospels? And that's how the Gospels are actually biography, and they're intended to be history. They're not midrash. They're intended as historical documents.
And how many other history books do we consider true that talk about zombies?
I'm sorry, but this is a presupposition against miracles you're making, and you're going on a humane argument.
No, it's not a presupposition against miracles.
Yes, it is.
It's not. What it is how do we determine whether or not a particular claim is justified? Even if Matthew wrote the book, and it was written by an eyewitness, that still doesn't mean that the events actually happened.
Hold on, Matt. You said even if it was written by an eyewitness, that doesn't mean it actually happened. But here, I think, why doesn't it mean it happened? Because it mentioned zombies, quote unquote.
Yes.
But yeah, I know you said that. But you deny Christianity.
Stop. There are people living today who you can walk over and go talk to, who will tell you about their experience of being abducted by aliens. Would you believe them?
Now, I've actually investigated this because...
Would you believe them?
Can I finish, please? Actually, the experiences with aliens, almost all of them, or at least all I've investigated, come from later hypnotic accounts, and they're actually using hypnotic suggestion onto them. So it is not at all similar, because Jesus was not a hypnotist.
So you're saying there are no accounts, no testimonials that aren't the result of something like hypnosis?
Not of alien abductions, no, sir.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, but you're just wrong. You're making yet another broad-based claim that there are no one of these. You've done this several times.
I mean, examples to the contrary, though.
I gave you a hypothetical. What about... Stop. What about all of the other claims of other religions that claim miracles? Do you believe them as well?
No, sir, because the evidence is totally different. Now, you might refer to...
No, the evidence is not different.
Could you provide me an example?
The Quran?
No, the Quran was not written by an eyewitness. It does not include miracles. Actually, the miracles are found in the Hadith, and even Muslim scholars dismiss the Hadith. Miracles are not found in the Quran.
Really?
Really.
Okay.
So you can't provide me an example, can you?
Off the top of my head, can I provide you an example? No.
Well, you seem to you claim to know the information well, but you can't provide me examples. And your entire denial of the
I don't have to provide you examples of other religions.
Sure.
I'm talking about what standards of evidence I would use in order to determine whether an account is believable or not. And an anonymous book, even if we think we might know who the authorship was, which is not necessarily the case, Talking about miracle claims is not sufficient evidence to believe the claim.
Why not?
Because why should it be? I heard from some guy, or you tell me that this happened to you, and I have no other evidence other than your word that this happened. It's not sufficient to believe that. If you use that as a standard of evidence, you would be believing all sorts of contradictory claims and all sorts of unreal claims.
It's much more likely
if that
it's
is an
made up.
acceptable standard of evidence for you, then it's not surprising that you find this stuff convincing.
Matt, you said that I would be believing all sorts of contradictory stuff, but you couldn't actually provide me an example of something else. So
I did. You said it's not there. I don't have an encyclopedia at my fingertips, so I cannot provide you the counter, and I'm trying to save time.
I've looked into it. It's not there. It's not there. So please don't make claims that you cannot back up right here.
I didn't make a claim. I asked
you did. You said I'd be believing contradictory things. You have not been able to back that up.
I said if you used that standard of evidence, you would be in a position to be believing contradictory claims.
What other claim would I believe by the standard of evidence? What other claim?
Last week, the angel Moroni appeared to me and told me that you were going to call the show. Do you believe me?
No, I don't, and I can tell you why. But I've got. But
why not? You have nothing other than my claim.
Can I finish the statement, please? Okay. The reason that I believe it because a popular theory to the resurrection is that the disciples lied about it, and this is refuted by social factors.
That's not my theory. That's not my theory. I see no reason to address it.
I know. I'm about to make an analogy. I'm about to make an analogy. Now, my theory on why you would say that is that you're lying for a specific purpose. Here we have a motive, and we don't have social factors like kinship to refute that. We don't have you dying for your belief, and we do have good attestation, but I'd rely mostly on kinship here. We don't have that kind of evidence, and so the evidence is far better for the disciples than it is for your claim that Moroni visited you last week. Far better. For those
how is it better? I understand what you're saying about ulterior motives, etc. But you have a book that you don't have any originals of, that you aren't positive who the author is, with claims in it that aren't supported by evidence from elsewhere.
And a long history of spin.
And a long history of other people, of motivation for propagating these particular stories.
Okay, Matt, you said, well, we don't have originals, and I just want to put out we don't have any originals from any manuscripts of the antiquity. That's special pleading there. You said we don't know who the author is.
It's not special pleading because I'm not comparing it to other things in antiquity.
So
I'm talking about standards of evidence.
That's the entire point, though. You're applying a different standard of evidence to this document than you are for others.
No, I'm not, because there aren't other documents that I would accept that make these claims.
So then any document that makes miraculous claims is disavowed by you automatically.
Yes.
Right? Okay,
yes.
So then how can you claim to be an atheist based on the evidence if you're automatically going to dismiss every piece of evidence to the contrary based on the fact that
I did not say I would dismiss every piece of evidence to the contrary. What I said was that if I would dismiss texts that made that claim. If there was additional, you better let me finish or I'm going to hang up on your ass. If there was additional supporting evidence, that's the point that I'm getting to. Is how do we go about establishing whether or not a claim is supported by sufficient evidence to justify accepting the claim. Text alone, whether it's from an eyewitness or a purported eyewitness or somebody who knew an eyewitness, is not sufficient evidence for me and for, I don't know, a court of law or science or pretty much anybody who's not willing to believe anything they read. Text alone is not sufficient. If there were additional evidence that went along with it, that is worth considering. However, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. If you tell me that your name is Tommy, I'm willing to accept that on face value with no other evidence required because, for one thing, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if your name is Bill or Steve or whatever. It makes no difference to me. If you tell me that you have a pet dragon or a pet dinosaur, that is an extraordinary claim, and I'm going to require more than just your say-so. That's what I'm talking about as a standard of evidence. You put words into my mouth saying that I was willing to dismiss all evidence, and that's not the case. I dismissed a specific type of evidence as insufficient to supporting the claim on its own.
Yes. It seems to be done, so I'll address it. Okay, you said, well, it's not extraordinary evidence, and you say it's not textual evidence isn't extraordinary, but I say it is extraordinary. It's a totally subjective criterion. You can make extraordinary mean anything you want it to mean, and then dismiss any type of evidence you want to dismiss. That's why philosophers, modern philosophers, do not use ecri, extraordinary claims require extraordinary